Ethan Cole was a quiet young man who lived in a small town by the sea. His days were simple, worked at the docks, helped his neighbors, and often sat on the cliffs at night to watch the ocean waves. Yet deep inside, he always felt like there was something more waiting for him. He did not know why, but he was drawn to stories of hidden places and ancient rulers. Old fishermen sometimes told tales of a secret land beyond the cliffs, a kingdom lost to time. Ethan listened closely, and his heart held on to every word. One evening, the sun dipped low and painted the sky in colors of fire and gold. Ethan wandered near the ruins that stood not far from the edge of the cliffs. The ruins were said to be cursed, but he did not believe such talk. He felt a strange pull each time he passed by. That night, he stepped inside the broken walls and noticed something different. A faint light glowed from an archway. It flickered like moonlight on water. Ethan walked closer. Ah! His hand brushed over the stone, and before he could think, the ground shifted under his feet. He stumbled forward and found himself standing in a place he had never seen before. The air was warm, the sky clear, and tall towers rose in the distance. Green fields stretched as far as his eyes could see. It was quiet, almost too quiet, but the silence carried a sense of life and hidden beauty. Ethan's heart raced. He felt he had crossed into another world, yet everything looked human, built by hands like his own. Ethan walked carefully, unsure if he was dreaming. He moved along a path lined with flowers that glowed softly under the light of the moon. Soon he reached a gate guarded by men in silver armor. Their eyes narrowed when they saw him. They had never seen someone dressed so plain, with clothes worn from dock work and hands rough from labor. Before they could question him, a voice called from beyond the gate. The voice was calm, but carried power. A woman stepped forward, and at once the guards bowed their heads. Da-da-da-da. She was dressed in robes that shimmered like woven light. Her crown was simple yet elegant, and her eyes shone with both strength and sorrow. Ethan knew at once who she was. This was the queen of the hidden kingdom. He had heard of her only in stories, but now she stood before him, real and alive. The queen studied him closely. Ethan lowered his gaze, unsure of what to say. He was only a dock worker, a man of no title or worth. Yet for reasons he could not explain, he felt that his steps had brought him here for a purpose. When the queen spoke, her voice was gentle. "You are not of this place," she said. "How did you cross into my land?" Ethan swallowed hard. "Do not know," he answered truthfully. "I only walked through the ruins, and then I was here. If I have broken a law, forgive me." The queen looked at him for a long moment. The guards waited for her command. Ethan expected her to send him away, perhaps even to order him locked up. But instead, she raised her hand, and the guards stepped back. There was something in his voice that touched her, something she had not heard in many years, honesty without fear. "Come," she said. "Walk with me." Ethan followed her through the gates into the heart of the kingdom. The palace walls shone under the moon, and gardens filled with white roses lined the paths. As they walked, Ethan felt as though time itself had stopped. He could not believe he was beside a queen. Yet she spoke to him not as a ruler to a subject, but as a woman curious about a stranger. She asked about his life, and he told her of his small town, the sea, and the quiet nights he spent staring at the horizon. She listened closely, her eyes softening as he spoke. For years, the queen had been surrounded by nobles and advisors who only sought power. They spoke to her with flattery, never with truth. Ethan's simple words were unlike anything she was used to. In that moment, a bond began to form. It was fragile, like the first note of a song, but it carried the promise of something greater. Ethan did not know where this path would lead him. He did not know that his life was about to change forever. But as he walked beside the queen, under the quiet sky, he felt that he had finally found the missing piece his heart had been searching for. Ethan spent his first night in the hidden kingdom, restless and awake. He had been given a small room near the palace walls. From his window, he could see the tall towers rising into the sky and hear the faint sound of water running through fountains in the gardens. Everything around him felt both strange and familiar. He kept wondering why the queen had chosen not to send him away. He was no knight, no noble, only a simple man from the docks. Yet she had looked at him with eyes that seemed to search deeper than titles. The next morning, the palace buzzed with voices. Servants hurried through the halls, and guards kept a careful eye on him. Many looked at Ethan with suspicion, whispering behind his back. They wondered why the queen had allowed this stranger to stay. Ethan tried to keep his head low and avoid their eyes. Still, he could not forget the way the queen had spoken to him. Her words were calm, and her tone had been gentle. He longed to see her again, though he dared not hope. Later that day, he was summoned to the gardens. The queen stood there waiting, dressed in simple robes that made her seem less like a ruler and more like a woman, enjoying the morning air. Ethan bowed clumsily, unsure of the right way to show respect. She smiled faintly, as though she could see his nerves. "Walk with me again," she said. They walked through the garden paths lined with roses and lilies. Birds sang in the branches above them, and the soft wind carried the smell of fresh flowers. Well, for a while neither spoke. Ethan wanted to ask so many questions, but he feared saying the wrong thing. Finally, the queen broke the silence. "Tell me again of your town," she said. "Tell me of the sea." Ethan began to speak. He told her about the ships he helped guide into the harbor, about the fishermen who set out at dawn, and about the children who played on the beach. He spoke of the waves crashing against the cliffs, and of how he often sat there to watch the sunset. His words were plain, but they carried the warmth of someone who loved his home. The queen listened carefully, her eyes softening with every detail. "You speak as if the sea is part of you," she said. Ethan nodded. "Is the only place where I feel truly at peace." The queen was silent for a moment. Then she said, "You are unlike the men of this court. They speak always of power, of land, of wealth. You speak of peace and of simple joys." It has been a long time since I heard words that were not wrapped in pride. Ethan felt his cheeks warm. He looked away, not sure how to answer. He was just being himself, nothing more. But the queen's words stirred something inside him, something he could not name. As the days passed, the queen asked to see him often. They walked together through the halls, through the gardens, and sometimes even along the quiet river that ran beside the palace. She asked him about his childhood, his work, his dreams. Ethan told her everything honestly, never hiding the truth. In return, she shared pieces of her own life. She told him of the heavy crown, of the endless decisions, and of the loneliness that came with being a ruler. Her voice grew soft whenever she spoke of her burdens, and Ethan listened without judgment. He did not try to flatter her or offer false comfort. He simply listened, and that seemed to be enough. The queen's advisors began to notice. They did not like what they saw. They whispered in dark corners that the stranger was growing too close to her. They warned her that a common man could never stand beside a queen. But the queen paid them no mind. For the first time in years, she felt her heart open, and she was not ready to let that go. One evening, after another long walk, Ethan found himself standing beside her in the great hall. The torches lit the stone walls with a golden glow. The queen looked tired, her shoulders heavy with the weight of her duties. Ethan wanted to speak, but hesitated. Finally, he said softly, "I wish there was something I could do to ease your burden." The queen turned her head and looked at him. Her eyes glimmered with a light that seemed both sad and hopeful. "Perhaps you already have," she whispered. Ethan's heart beat fast at her words. He did not fully understand what she meant, but he felt the bond between them grow stronger with each passing day. He was no longer just a stranger in a hidden kingdom. He was becoming something more, though he did not yet know how much more it would change his life. The days passed, and Ethan's presence in the palace was no longer a secret. Servants spoke in whispers. Guards watched him closely, and the nobles grew uneasy. They could see that the queen looked different when he was near. Her voice softened, her steps grew lighter, and her eyes held a spark they had not seen in years. To some, this was a threat. To others, it was a scandal waiting to break. One morning, a council meeting was held. The queen sat on her throne, calm and steady, while her advisors argued among themselves. They insisted that a man of no title could not be allowed to walk freely through the palace. They warned that he could be a danger, a spy, or worse. Ethan stood at the side of the hall, his head lowered. He said nothing, but every word spoken against him cut deeply into his heart. He knew he did not belong here. He was just a dock worker from a small town. Still, he could not deny the bond he felt with the queen. When the meeting ended, a nobleman named Lord Axton approached the queen in front of the court. He was proud, sharp-eyed, and known for his hunger for power. With a voice loud enough for all to hear, he declared, "If this man truly wishes to stay by your side, let him prove his worth. Let him face a trial, not of words, but of action." The hall fell silent. Ethan raised his eyes for the first time, confused and uneasy. The queen frowned, but before she could respond, Lord Axton pressed on. "Let him show us if he has courage, or if he is nothing more than a dreamer, clinging to false hope." Ethan's heart pounded. He wanted to refuse to step back, to return to the life he once knew. Yet when he looked at the queen, he saw not just her crown, but her eyes, filled with quiet worry. Something inside him stirred. He could not walk away now. "I will face it," Ethan said simply. The trial was set for the next day. Word spread quickly through the kingdom, and people gathered to see the stranger who dared stand before nobles and guards. The challenge was not a duel of swords, but a test of courage. A group of raiders had been troubling nearby villages, stealing food and burning homes. Many knights had already tried and failed to stop them. Ethan was to ride with a small guard and defend the villagers. If he returned alive, he would prove his worth. If he failed, he would be forgotten. That night, Ethan sat alone in his room. His hands trembled as he thought of what lay ahead. He had never fought in battles. He knew how to work ropes and nets, not how to face armed men. Fear pressed on him like a heavy stone. Yet in his heart he remembered the queen's voice, her kindness, and the way she had listened to him when no one else had. For her, he found strength he did not know he had. The next morning, he rode out with the guards. The road was long, and the silence heavy. When they reached the village, they found smoke rising and families huddled in fear. The raiders struck soon after, shouting and charging with weapons in hand. Ethan's body shook, but he forced himself to stand. He grabbed a wooden staff from the ground and stepped in front of the villagers. His heart screamed with fear, but he refused to move. The fight was chaos. The guards clashed with the raiders, steel against steel. Ethan swung the staff with all his strength, blocking blows and pushing back attackers. He was struck more than once, his arms aching, but he would not fall. He saw a child crying near the fire, and without thinking, he ran to shield her. A raider raised his blade, but Ethan threw himself forward, tackling the man to the ground. The villagers rallied behind him, throwing stones and chasing the raiders away. When the battle ended, Ethan was bruised and bleeding, but alive. The villagers cheered him, calling him brave. He shook his head, saying he had only done what was right. Yet deep inside, he felt something had changed. He was no longer just a dock worker. He had faced fear and stood his ground. News of his courage reached the palace before he returned. The queen listened with quiet pride as the messenger spoke of his deeds. When Ethan walked back into the great hall, weary but standing tall, the nobles had no words. Lord Axton's face burned with anger, but he could not deny what had happened. The queen rose from her throne and looked at Ethan with eyes that held both gratitude and something deeper. In that moment, everyone in the hall saw what she had seen from the start. Ethan's courage in the village spread through the kingdom like fire in the wind. Everywhere, people spoke of the man who had stood his ground against raiders and saved innocent lives. Some called him a hero, others doubted and said luck had carried him through. But no matter what they believed, they all knew his name now. Ethan Cole was no longer just a stranger who had wandered through the palace gates. He was a man who had shown bravery where others had failed. The queen kept her thoughts hidden, but inside her heart stirred with feelings she could no longer deny. When she saw Ethan return to the palace, his clothes torn and his face marked with bruises, her eyes filled with both sorrow and pride. She wanted to rush to his side, to thank him, to care for his wounds. Yet she knew every eye in the court was watching. She held her place, but her gaze lingered on him longer than a ruler's gaze should linger on any man. That evening, the palace celebrated the safety of the villages. Banquets were prepared, music filled the halls, and the people rejoiced. But Ethan did not feel at ease. He sat at the edge of the gathering, uncomfortable in the fine clothes they had given him. Nobles raised their glasses, yet their eyes still held judgment. Some clapped him on the back with false cheer, while others whispered that the queen's favor for him had gone too far. Ethan tried to smile, but his heart grew heavy. He knew he was still an outsider. Later that night, unable to bear the crowd, he slipped away into the palace gardens. The moon shone bright, casting silver light across the roses and fountains. Ethan walked slowly, lost in thought. He wondered if he should leave before he brought more trouble to the queen. Perhaps his presence only made her duties harder. Perhaps his heart had led him into a place where he did not belong. As he stood by the fountain, he heard footsteps. The queen appeared, her robe trailing softly behind her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said quietly, "Why did you leave the hall?" Ethan bowed his head. "I do not belong there. I am not one of them. I am just a man from the docks who is foolish enough to speak to a queen." The queen stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his face. "Do you truly believe you are foolish?" Ethan gave a sad smile. "Yes, foolish for thinking I could ever stand near you without shame. Foolish for wishing for something that could never be." The queen's breath caught at his words. She could see the weight in his heart, the struggle between love and fear. Slowly, she reached out and touched his arm. "And what is it that you wish for?" she asked. Ethan hesitated. His chest tightened, his voice almost broke, but he let the words fall from his lips in a whisper. "I wish I could marry her." The night grew still. The sound of the fountain faded. The air seemed to hold its breath. The queen's eyes widened, for she knew who he spoke of. He had not said her name, but every word pointed to her. Silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. Ethan turned away, ashamed of what he had said. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I should not have spoken. We'll leave if you command it." But the queen did not command him to leave. She stepped closer, her hand still resting on his arm, her voice soft but steady. "Do not turn away, Ethan. For many years I have carried the weight of a crown. I have listened to voices filled with pride and lies, but your voice is different. It carries truth. And tonight, when you spoke, I felt my heart answer." Ethan looked at her, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What do you mean?" The queen drew a deep breath. Her heart pounded, her hands trembled, but she did not falter. "You whispered your wish. Now I give you mine." "My answer is yes." Ethan could hardly believe her words. His heart raced, his body felt light, as if the world itself had changed in a single breath. He reached for her hand, and she did not pull away. In that quiet garden, under the watchful moon, they stood together, no longer queen and commoner, but two souls bound by love. Far in the shadows, unseen eyes watched them. Not everyone would accept what had just been spoken. Trouble was brewing, but in that moment, neither Ethan nor the queen cared. Their hearts had chosen, and no power on earth could erase what had just been said. The days that followed were filled with both joy and storm. The queen's words in the garden had bound her heart to Ethan, but the kingdom was not ready to accept what had happened. Whispers turned into arguments in the halls. Nobles met in secret, their voices sharp with anger. They said a queen could never choose a man with no title. They feared that her choice would weaken the crown, that people would see love as a risk to power. Yet outside the palace walls, the people told another story. Villagers who had seen Ethan's courage spoke of him with pride. They said he was a man of heart, a man who had fought for them when others had not. For many, he was already a hero. Ethan knew the storm was rising, but he did not run. He walked the palace halls with calm steps, though inside his chest his heart carried both fear and hope. The queen stood by him in every room, her presence a shield against the voices that sought to tear them apart. She spoke firmly to her council. "I have made my choice. It is not of power or blood, but of truth." Ethan has shown the strength that no crown can teach. Lord Axton was not silent. He rose in the council with anger burning in his voice. "This is madness. He is no knight, no noble, no man of rank. If he remains, he will bring ruin. If he takes her hand, he will tear the kingdom apart." His words cut through the hall, and for a moment, silence fell. All eyes turned to the queen. She did not waver. "What tears a kingdom apart is not love," she answered, "but pride and greed. I will not let such voices rule my heart." Ethan listened, his hands clenched, knowing her courage was greater than his own. He wished to protect her, but it was she who was protecting him. That night, as they walked once more in the quiet garden, Ethan spoke softly. "If staying by your side brings danger, then I should leave. I could not bear to see harm come to you." The queen shook her head. "Do not say such words. Leaving would wound me more than any enemy ever could. You have given me hope. You have given me truth. I will not lose that, no matter the cost." Their love became a quiet flame that burned brighter with each passing day. But the nobles did not give up. A small group, led by Lord Axton, stirred unrest. They whispered lies to the people, saying Ethan sought to claim power for himself, that he had tricked the queen with false charm. They sent men to watch him, waiting for the moment he would stumble. But Ethan carried himself with honesty. He helped in the villages, spoke kindly to servants, and showed no hunger for wealth or throne. The more they watched, the more the people began to believe in him. The tension grew until it reached the palace gates. A crowd gathered, some in support, others in anger. Voices rose, calling for the queen to choose her crown over her heart. Ethan stood at her side as the doors opened and they faced the people together. The queen raised her hand, and the voices fell silent. "You ask if I should choose my crown?" she said, her voice clear and strong. "But what is a crown without the people who stand beneath it? What is a ruler without truth? This man has fought for you, stood with you, and asked for nothing in return. I choose him not because of what he owns, but because of who he is," the crowd murmured. Some shouted in anger, but others began to cheer. Slowly the sound grew, until the voices of support drowned out the cries of doubt. The people had seen Ethan's deeds, so they remembered the raiders, the smoke, and the man who had stood in front of them with nothing but a wooden staff. Their cheers rose like thunder. The nobles fell silent, their power shaken by the voices of the people. That night, Ethan and the queen stood together on the balcony of the palace. The stars stretched wide above them, and the city below glowed with torches and lanterns. Ethan held her hand, his voice soft. "I never dreamed this could be my life. I never dreamed you would choose me." The queen smiled, her eyes bright with both strength and love. "And I never dreamed someone would give me the courage to choose my heart, yet here we stand." As the wind carried the sound of the cheering crowd, Ethan knew his life had changed forever. He was no longer a stranger, no longer a man lost in dreams. He was the one who had whispered a wish, and she was the queen who had answered yes. Together they would face every trial, not as ruler and subject, but as two souls bound by love. And their story would live on, carried in the voices of the people, as a tale of hope and truth for generations to come.